morning, everybody, everyone from the UK. It's my pleasure to introduce the last fifth session, mentoring session. Today with us is again John, Lizzie, and Professor Chris Bishop. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are we today, John?
I'm very well, thanks, Jadranka. Yeah. Looking forward to talking about frozen fruits and vegetables for the next hour or so.
I'm sure that it will be a very interesting topic because a lot of companies from the Western Balkans are very keen to hear about this, and also is a big opportunity for them to export to the UK. Also, we have 3 companies who will be attending IFE this year. I'm very delighted they are also today with us.
Good.
Today, first time, we'll change this session. We'll introduce our audience to ask the questions directly to you at the end. So Alex, would you be kind to, at the end, to bring all the audience so they can ask the questions? If not, they always can send via question on the webinar. So I will now let you, John, to go ahead with this fantastic topic. And I have to say, I'm a little bit sad that we had a fantastic 5 mentoring sessions, but I'm sure we'll have more in the future.
Well, thank you, Jadranka. I think you're right. I mean, I hope people have enjoyed the sessions we've done over the last week or so. In many ways, though, this is just the start. That, you know, talking about it and understanding the market and trying to understand as much about the market and the competitive environment is important, and it's a good starting point. But the real work starts now in terms of companies in the Western Balkans and Southeast Europe, sort of looking really seriously at the UK market and working out what they need to do next. And I think coming to the IFE in London next week can do nothing but good, and will help people. Hopefully, it will turn what we're talking about in these webinars. It will turn it into real life, and people will be able to see and hear from people who are buying and selling these sorts of products. And we've enjoyed being involved, and we look forward to being involved. Hopefully, further from now. Jadranka, and thanks for all your help. So just really quickly, who are we? Some people may be joining us for the first time this morning. Maybe other people will have been on the other seminars or the webinars rather. And so at Promar, we're a consultancy company working in agriculture and food. We're quite a large company for what we do. We have about 145 people work for us in the UK in three key areas: farm consulting, agri-food supply chains, and then looking at the environment and sustainability type issues. In turn, we are part of a much bigger sort of agri-tech based company called Genus, and Genus have about 3,000 people employed all around the world. They're operating in about 70 countries. So Genus are a substantial sort of business, and Promar is their consultancy arm. And then joining us today, and Chris, thanks for doing this. We have Chris Bishop. Chris is a professor in post-harvest technology based at Lincoln Universities, which is one of the main universities in the UK for agriculture and food. And Chris is a specialist in post-harvest technology and storage. In particular, that includes both fresh and processed horticultural products, and a whole range of consultancy experience. We just listed some of the places you've worked there, Chris: Egypt and Ireland and Spain, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, Macedonia, Lebanon, Colombia, and so on, and working for a wide range of organizations, including FAO, World Bank, and these sorts of organizations. So Chris, thanks for joining us this morning. And what we've heard from around the world, maybe when it comes to processing, and we're not sure this is the right way to go about it, but what we've heard from people in many parts of the world is when they think about processing, they say things like, we produce as much as we can, we sell as much as we can in the fresh market, and then what we can't sell or isn't of good enough quality, what do we do with that? Oh, we process it, and then we sell it as frozen. And it's almost seen as an afterthought. And I'm not sure that's the right way to go about looking at the building a business in the frozen horticultural sector. But what we do hear from the best of class people, and there are plenty of these people around the world, they could be in Europe, they could be in Western Europe, they could be in Eastern Europe, they could be in parts of Latin America and other places. But what they say is things like, we don't just process what we have left over. We basically produce, usually on a contractual basis, that the varieties that are specifically geared towards processing, that are best suited to processing. We just don't process what's left over from our fresh production. We invest in the right technology, and everything we do is aimed at producing the best processed products. And actually, we're very different from a fresh produce based business. So although the products, they start off with the same products, they could be apples, they could be berries. We've talked about berries quite a lot, Jadranka. They could be other products. A fresh produce business and a process business, I think, are quite different, and I think it's important to bear that in mind. And one of the other things we've talked about is the importance of the service package. So there are a number of things that are required to make a processing business successful, or give it a chance of being successful. And if some element of this service package isn't quite right, so we talk about the service package, it could be having the correct varieties, the correct seasonality of supply, having good, well-organized logistics, having the right sort of packaging and consistent pricing. And if you've got those things in place, then you're in the game, as it were. Basically, those are almost the basic requirements you need to meet to be successful. And I think adding to all those sort of practical things about varieties and seasonality of supply, logistics, packaging, etc., you also need to take into account the supply sources, overall sustainability and provenance type credentials. And what we found is that around the world, lots of companies can meet these requirements. If you have a weak link there somewhere, it just weakens the overall service package, and it reduces the chance of finding sort of real long-term success. So you need to be good across a whole range of different factors, basically. And something that Chris, you might comment on that service package concept in a little bit later, maybe. But one thing we noticed is that sort of frozen berries, they're a product of great interest in the UK. So this is something, I think it only came out yesterday, and it came out on the BBC News, and it was saying that the UK government calculate a cost of living index, and it's been particularly in the media over the last 18 months with the incredible rates of inflation we've been seeing in the UK and other parts of the world, and I'm sure that's perhaps unfortunately been the case in southeastern Europe as well. But this sort of level of inflation, and what they've done is they include a whole range of different products in this inflationary index. And one of the products they've decided to include is frozen berries. And the explanation for this, Jadranka, is that frozen berries are used a lot, not least in smoothies, which are, they're a big trend in the UK. And so, frozen berries have sort of suddenly become, much more high profile as an individual product. Now, what it means for this project, or the project you're looking to, I'm not quite sure. We'll find out over the next. But it means that frozen berries are they're in the eye of the consumer. They're clearly in the eye of the government, and what have you.
Very interesting.
I think that's probably good news. I think I'd rather have a product that I was involved with being sort of in people's thinking and thought process than maybe not at all, basically. But Chris, I think I owe you for spotting this one yesterday. But it just struck us as quite interesting that frozen berries are suddenly sort of in the news in a way that probably they haven't been in the past.
So we're bringing the company, John, just in the right time.
Yeah.
It could get any better, isn't it?
Yeah. Chris, you're going to talk a little bit about the handling of frozen fruit.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Yes, I think that thing on frozen berries is very interesting. It's now one of the 700 items that there are which they use for assessing the cost of living. I asked to put this slide in because if we are talking about frozen products, people have a habit of just assuming that as long as it's frozen, it doesn't matter what the temperature is. Well, I regret to say it's not quite as simple as that. And certainly here in the UK, and I think in the European Union as well, and many other parts, if we are talking of frozen products, they should be below minus 18 degrees C. Now that figure is not just chosen at random, it's that there are various parasites, pathogens that will grow, albeit very, very slowly, at temperatures down to about minus 18. So we want to have the product below minus 18 degrees C, typically minus 18 to minus 22. And so it's important to remember that it's not just keeping it below zero. And the particular challenges we have to this always are actually in the handling. I get myself involved with various insurance companies from time to time when they have insurance claims on things like this. And if we've got the temperature logged, it may be that the temperature has been below minus 18 almost all the time, but during loading or unloading, it hasn't been. It's perhaps gone up that little bit, and this can give us problems. So there's an example of a typical dock, what we call a docker, for unloading our truck. You back the truck against those sponge sides to there so that we've got as good a seal as possible. Having said that, this photo is not one that I like in another way because we're in the sun. And the sun at times can be, give us some big problems. But we can have these problems, and particularly on the loading and unloading. And work has been done to show that if you open the truck doors with the frozen goods, that the air temperature can increase by up to 24 degrees C in 2 minutes. Now, and that's a reference to the research there. I'm not saying it always does, but it can make a big difference and quickly. So we've really got to make sure that when we're talking about frozen products coming here to the UK, that we've got a very good cool chain, for frozen products, and it's really got to be done well. So I just really want to emphasize that when we're talking about frozen temperatures, it's not just below zero, we're talking of below minus 18. Okay, John, back to you.
That's really interesting, Chris, and that to me, that all comes down to attention to detail, right almost until the last minute of the process. So you can have spent many months growing your products, your soft fruit or whatever product we're talking about. You can have spent months growing your soft fruit. You can have then frozen it. You can then sort of driven it halfway across Europe and what have you. And if you get it wrong at the last minute, those last couple of minutes, almost the whole year's work can not go completely to waste, but you can do a lot of damage in a very short period of time, basically.
Exactly, John.
So
Much better
to me,
that's
attention to detail, and that's all part of this service package concept that you've got to
exactly.
get.
Yeah, no, I think I should have used the word service package. We used it last time. It really is just so important that we get all the things right.
Yeah. Okay, rightio. Okay, Chris, thanks very much indeed for your comments, and I'm sure we'll come back to you a bit later on. So, Lizzie, you're going to take us on from here for the next session, aren't you, or the next part of our presentation? And you just shout, Lizzie, when you want me to move the slides on.
Thanks, John, for that. So I'll take you through some of the next slides, and thank you for joining us this morning. So basically, just to kick off with, the UK in terms of its frozen fruit and vegetables consumption is highly dependent on the role that imports play, and we're just going to look a little bit more at what our import market's looking like. So here we've got the domestic production over the last 10 years of frozen vegetables within the UK. The overall trend has been declining over the last 10 years. However, there's been a bit of an upsurge in 2021 when it was worth about 30 million. And this was the highest rate since 2016. What I would say is for production of horticultural products in the UK, labour is a really key issue. We're struggling to find the people to do it. UK people don't tend to want to do that kind of work, and the issues with Brexit have meant that it's harder to get people that would usually do the work over to do it, and that has had an impact on horticultural production and running those businesses in the UK. There's strong demand for British produce in the fresh produce aisle. So you'd see the British flag on a lot of fresh produce rather than on, let's say, the frozen fruit and vegetables that you see in the aisles. There's a lot less marketing space, and frozen veg tends to be a key driver for that is around convenience and it being ready prepared. So you just pour it straight into the saucepan, put it on, and it's cooked. You're not having to chop up and peel your carrots, chop your broccoli up, and you haven't got the wastage afterwards either, because it's all fully ready for you to use. The exception would be peas, which are frozen within a couple of hours of being harvested. It's got a very short supply chain and very time critical. As such, you wouldn't find peas within the fresh produce aisle. They'd all be within the frozen sector, and we do have quite a good UK production of peas there. If you could move on now, John, yep. If that's okay. So imports of frozen vegetables, as you can see, so we're producing around £30 million worth, whereas we're importing £300 million worth. So you can see that the import market is 10 times larger than the domestic market for frozen vegetables, and they've been increasing. The overall trend has been an increasing one, and making up the space that's been lost from the fall in domestic production. So yeah, thanks, John. So imports of frozen fruit been continually increasing. They've recorded strong growth, particularly over the last 5 years. So it's now up to around £250 million per annum, and a lot of UK production would be consumed more as fresh produce. So any fruit that we're producing in the UK market would be found in those fresh aisles rather than the frozen aisles, and that's mainly probably down to the costs. So I was watching a cookery programme last night actually, and it echoes what John spoke about first thing, and Jamie Oliver was doing how to cook your meals for a lot cheaper rate, and he got out frozen fruit, and he said use frozen fruit, it's half the price of fresh produce, fresh fruit. With UK production, they'll get the higher prices, so it tends to go down the fresh produce aisle rather than the frozen aisle, where the price points are a lot lower. Move on, thanks, John.
Yep, sure.
So last time the topic of jam got picked up quite a lot, so we just thought we'd look at the production of jam. So frozen fruit might end up going into the production of jam, and UK production of jam it's been somewhat consistent, so it has its ups and its downs, but if you look at it, it's broadly stayed around sort of the 100 to 220,000 tonnes per annum that are being produced, and that includes all different varieties, which we'll pull onto in a little bit more detail later on. Thanks, John. In terms of UK imports of jam, now they have been continual growth up to 2018, where it's reached a value market of about £150 million per annum. However, since it has faced a little bit more of a challenge. So in 2021, it's dropped down to about £110 million worth. Could that have been because of UK production increasing in those years? Potentially. Could it be a bit of a market downturn? Maybe. We're all being told to eat more healthily. Jam is seen as being very high in sugar. There's also been quite a lot more kind of style to around kind of different spreads. So whether that's kind of chocolate spread, peanut butter spread, there's this product called Biscoff spread, which is like a coffee biscuit spread. So it's increasingly getting competition from those elements, and also the drive for a healthier lifestyle within the UK, and probably around sort of the initiatives around the high fat and sugar content of foods, and potential taxes and regulations around the selling of those.
I suppose, Lizzie, that does also create an opportunity for some people will diversify from conventional jam into sort of low sugar jam or diabetic type jam, foods that are, or jam that is sort of suitable for people who suffer from diabetes. And you know, for every, I suppose for every sort of challenge, there's always an opportunity, isn't there, for somebody?
Yeah, definitely.
You want to move on?
Yes, please, if that's okay.
Okay.
So here we've got some product examples of frozen fruit on offer in the UK market. As you can see from these, there's little in the way of origin, so where the fruit or the vegetables have come from. So the sort of the British angle isn't major, so there's plenty of opportunity there for imports. There is some branding, so you've got the likes of Del Monte that provide fruit to the market, and that's sold within the frozen aisle. However, it is mainly dominated by the supermarket own labels. In terms of packaging, it's kind of all within those plastic bags. However, it has moved towards resealable, so people want to be able to pour out a little bit for that day, seal it back up again and put it back in the freezer, and it's just majoring on that convenience factor and also reducing the amount of wastage that we're getting. So the main drivers for the frozen fruit uplift would be the demand for a healthier lifestyle, so smoothies, convenience, so they just want to pour what they want, put it back away, it doesn't go off in the fridge. Also easier preparation, so you can see the likes of mango and pineapple on there. It's a lot easier for people to prepare. Rather than chopping a mango, you've got to take it away from the skin, you've got a large stone in there, so you get a lot more fruit for what you're getting, really. Instead of buying just one mango, you'll get a whole bag that's already prepared, and much the same with the pineapple, really. It's just taken away the time in terms of the preparation, which unfortunately consumers in the UK just are sort of time poor, and they want things ready to go as much as possible. And as I touched on earlier, sort of frozen fruit sort of retails for about half the price of fresh fruit, kilo for kilo price. So for consumers, it is kind of a major win. And also you can get it kind of year round, while we do have strawberries and raspberries and blueberries on the shelves all year round as well. If you go to the frozen sector, you know that you'll have the product there that you want. Thanks, John. So now we're just having a look at what the frozen vegetable aisle look like. So frozen vegetables would take up much more shelf space than the frozen fruit in the supermarkets, and that's driven by convenience. So within the frozen vegetable aisle, you'd get pre-prepared, like sort of carrots, broccoli, all those elements both in mixed bags and in separate bags, so it's completely consumer choice what they want. And they could be in large bags that you pour out of, down to individual serving bags that can be just kind of put into the microwave, beeped, and then they're ready to go. All types of different fruit and vegetables, but peas would be the market leader, and even within the pea sector you'd have different kind of tiers. So the petit pois, so very small kind of peas at a higher price, to sort of the slightly larger ones. It would probably be under a retail own brand. In terms of key brands, so Birdseye would be the largest brand, but again there's a lot of retailer owned brands in the sector. As well as frozen vegetables, there'd be the frozen potatoes kind of sector, and that would be very large. And you know, you've got a huge choice there in terms of the different chipping varieties, going into different shapes, all kinds of sorts. And the best way to look at the frozen sector would be, if you're ever coming over to the UK, you know, just take a walk down the frozen aisle, because you'd see the vast amount of different kind of products that are on offer all year round and in quite vast quantities. And as we've touched on before, the key driver around these areas would be the convenience factor for consumers, really, and helping them to cut down the time in which it takes. So when we get back and we've only got sort of half an hour to prepare the meal on a weekday, Monday to Friday, frozen veg is an easy go-to, really. Thanks, John. So just want to touch on here a use for frozen fruit in the processing industry, and that's yogurts and dairy desserts. UK is a huge consumer of yogurts. You go into a UK supermarket and you go down the dairy aisle, and yogurts will take up a considerable chunk of that. And you've got a huge range in terms of the products on offer. So you've got products that are targeted towards children. You've got ones that are targeted towards health, indulgence, convenience. You know, you've got it as drinks, different pouches, pots, different pot sizes. So large pots, small pots, multi-packs. There's a huge range on offer, sort of whatever you're after. I'm sure you'd find it within our yogurt aisle, really. And fruit flavourings would account for a huge majority of the yogurts that are on offer here. And within those fruit flavourings, frozen fruit would be the major source. So we'd kind of get those frozen fruits in, and then they'd be combined with the yogurts. So the yogurts would either have kind of chunks of fruit within it, or you've got other ones where there's the fruit is separate to the yogurt and you mix it in yourselves. So yeah, there's a huge opportunity within the yogurt industry for frozen fruit, and that's only going to increase as the yogurt industry doesn't seem to be slowing down, really. Would you agree, John?
Yeah, I think the point to make here is that there is a huge choice for consumers to make, and some of these products, and it's quite heavily branded. So you know, it's quite tempting to sometimes think, you know, these markets are all very similar, and there are similarities across most of these markets. But if you look at sort of, you know, the frozen vegetable market, which is sort of largely sort of quite commoditized, and it's not particularly well branded or heavily branded, then you could be in the same shop and sort of walk around the corner to the yogurt and the dairy desserts aisle, and virtually all the products there are branded. And so again, in terms of the way the sorts of companies that are buying the raw materials and how they're using them and in what context they're using them is very different. And I think the point we just included this slide to show that, you know, this is just a snapshot of what you would typically find in the UK market, and there's a huge variety there, basically.
Perfect, thanks, John.
Yep.
And then we just wanted to touch on the smoothie market, which has been an incredible success story, and the market itself continues to strengthen, and that's both on purchased smoothies and also making them at home. So a lot of consumers now have gone down sort of a liquidizer route at home. It's very in fashion. Again, it's pushed on convenience and being a healthy option, and is a key way of getting your 5 a day, which is sort of a campaign which the UK government puts a lot behind. And you know, there's a fashion for just putting lots of different fruit and vegetables in the same one. So it could be some spinach in there, kale, but then throwing in mango, berries, those kinds of elements, and all about being getting your 5 a day and being a healthy start to the day. And frozen fruit and veg makes it a really good addition to those. They're all ready, you just put it straight in, you haven't got to prepare anything, and once it gets blitzed round, it helps to cool the whole drink down. And there's a huge product range out there as well, and as you can see, there's some different ones there in terms of the different brands, and in supermarkets the branded market would definitely be the leading ones, with sort of retailers wouldn't hold that greater strength in the sort of part of the market within the smoothie market. So there's a lot of opportunity there in terms of supplying them with frozen fruit and veg, and there's a good price point there. Smoothies aren't cheap on the market, so there would be market there to be won, really. Thanks, John.
Okay, Lizzie, thanks.
And then just in terms of the key market drivers that I've touched on as we've gone through, so health is the key one. So we're wanting to eat sort of 5 portions of fruit and veg a day, and the government are always sort of suggesting that might be increased going forwards. We're living longer, so people want a healthier lifestyle, and fruit and veg is being pushed as a way to increase that and make it us better. Convenience, so we're very time poor. We've got less time to cook, especially Monday to Friday within the week. Frozen fruit and veg has a much longer shelf life. It's always there and it's always ready. You're not buying a broccoli on a Monday and then going back the following Tuesday to have a look at it in the fridge and it doesn't look quite as good as it was. You know, if you've got the broccoli in the freezer, it's the same this week as it's going to be in 2 months' time. It's a lot easier to prepare. So the carrots are already peeled, they're already chopped. You just pour them straight into the saucepan, and you might have some peas and sweet corn in that mix as well. So you don't have to be getting out different ones as well. And you can just pour as much and as little as you want and put it back in the freezer, and it's there for the next time. In terms of niches, so organics has been mentioned sometimes in the questions, and there's definitely a role in the organic sector within the frozen fruit and veg. However, it is probably smaller on the smaller side, but there's definitely the opportunity there. And in terms of cost, so there is a greater challenge around there. So the cost of energy within the UK is continually increasing and is probably at one of the highest rates that it's been. So the cost of storing frozen fruit and veg is a lot higher at the moment than it ever has been. So it's something that people are going to be looking at a lot more, probably not so much at home because you have your fridge, and a lot of people have had a fridge and a freezer and they just have it switched on all the time and you haven't really got a choice. But definitely more within sort of the processing and the supermarket industry, they might be reevaluating how much space they give to those because of the cost of running them. I don't know if Chris, you would have anything to add within that little bit there, or?
Yeah, if I guess it's, I very often maintain this frozen produce are becoming more and more of a challenge, and people are increasing the amount of insulation, air tightness, etc. But also within some of the supermarkets themselves, they, particularly during the well, about 8 months of the year when it's not that warm in Britain, they are now increasingly using the reject heat from the freezer units in their supermarket to keep other parts of the supermarket warm. So there's been a considerable amount of change on things like heat pumps and so on. And with something like frozen produce, they know what the temperatures are going to be, so it makes it easier to design, easier to be efficient. But nonetheless, you know, the energy is becoming a very big factor. And if you're trying to keep things at -18, you know, it can be very expensive. Increasingly, I think also we have in our supermarkets, we used to have, still in some supermarkets, they have an open trough type of freezer. Increasingly, they have them so they've actually got lids to them, or sliding lids, to try and reduce the energy. But energy is something that's an important factor, and certainly some companies which used to sort of import all their frozen goods in one lot every 3 months, shall we say, are trying now to do it on a monthly basis, so they haven't got to have such large holding capacity. But it's still, compared to the value of the product, the energy is not always as critical when we're talking about high value products like frozen fruit, or fairly high value products.
I suppose one of the things to think about, though, is that the cost of running a frozen fruit and vegetable factory, the energy costs there are significant, aren't they? So sort of remaining in this environment of high food inflation in the UK, and we're seeing this across in many other parts of the world, but the requirement to try and remain cost competitive and look at every possible energy saving device, and the use of sustainable energy. And I think we're seeing people look at renewable energy in a way that maybe they haven't in the past, because the picture at the bottom is a processing factory in Belgium, where they've got a strong freezing industry in Belgium and in Holland to some extent. But the cost of running these factories is significant, and we've got some data later on that shows how much the cost of energy have increased. So it's a critical thing. And I think the last point there just to make is the the change in diets we're seeing in the UK. So plant-based diets are becoming increasingly popular in the UK. And again, if I was a frozen fruit and vegetable producer, I'd say that's good. That's good. This change in diet, away from dairy, away from regular consumption of meat or less regular consumption of meat, and more towards a plant-based diet. That all plays to the strength of the frozen fruit and vegetable sector.
Absolutely, John. That's very well. And this larger capacity gives you economies of scale and various energy efficient systems. I mean, there used to be 16 major plants in this country doing frozen peas. We're now down to 5.
Yeah.
And the quantity has not changed that much, but the size of those 5 units is very much bigger. And this is partly been economies of scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Lizzie, is there anything else you want to say there, Lizzie, about the sort of key market drivers, or shall we move on?
Move on, if that's all right, John.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, right. I think this is an important slide.
So yesterday, sort of in the last few sessions, jam's been touched on quite a bit, and basically we wanted to just show you something. Well, this is a picture that Chris sent through to us. And basically, it's just showing the amount of range that's on offer. So while supermarkets are trying to reduce the SKU, so the number of products they've got on offer, in some instances, they just can't do it. Consumers want choice and they want options, and this, you can see here the wide range of different jams on offer. So the different, and they'll be split by different manufacturers, different brands, different product sizes, different fruits. There'll be preserves there, all different kinds, and it's just so really that there's continually opportunity out there. And whilst retailers are wanting to reduce things, reduce the number of SKUs, to reduce their pricings, they've all got to bow down to the consumer at some point. And if the consumer wants variety, then they've still got to continue to provide that.
So can I come in here, Lizzie?
Yeah, definitely.
As you said, this is my slide. This is not the full range, and this is actually the quality control room at one of the large jam manufacturers or jam companies in the UK. And what they do is they keep one jar from each batch, and you may be able to see that in some of those shelves that they're more than one deep. So that from each batch up to, I think, for a 6-month period, they keep them. And you've got all sorts of combinations there. You've got lime marmalade with thick cut orange slices. You've got lime marmalade with thin cut orange slices. You've got strawberries, whole strawberries. You've got ones where they've got, strawberry pulp, seeds removed, etc. There's a whole range of different things there. I couldn't believe how many different permutations and options you can get for jams and marmalade.
I suppose what it shows, Chris and Lizzie, is that we talk about jam as if it's again a uniform product, but actually, how many different types of jam are there? Well, I can't count them all, Chris, but presumably there's 100 different varieties there. And I suppose one of the things is that we've often felt is that, so in the Western Balkans or Southeastern Europe, they might say, hey, we've got some great strawberry jam, for example. But actually, you need more than strawberry jam. You probably need having a range. If you only got one product to offer, you are less interest to the customer, basically. But if you've got a range of products that you can offer, and a range of different pack sizes and product formulations and what have you, then you start becoming more interesting, basically. I'm not saying that everybody's got to have 100 different varieties of jam, but I suppose it does show that, again, the sophistication of the UK market. There's a jam there for everybody, isn't there, really?
Yeah.
So we talk about jam.
And you're thinking about
jam is not just jam.
And your remark there, John, about pack size. For instance, one of the jam manufacturers here in Britain, when COVID came, they saw this as a massive opportunity for their jams, because if you are then going into a hotel or whatever it is, they are very keen that you have your own little individual jar of jam for each individual person, so there's no possibility of cross-contamination, etc. So they started to produce millions of small, or increased, they were already producing some, but of small jars of jam. And so the actual quantity of jam in tons has not necessarily changed very much. But now, because they're packaging them in small little jars, which they can charge more for pro rata, it's made a big difference to their sales.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a really, it's a very interesting slide in some ways, if you like looking at pictures of jam, that is, but it shows again how, sort of again in what might be quite a mature market, how, I mean, the classic response to a mature market, which I think jam is in the UK overall, is to segment the market, and you produce different types of jam in different pack sizes, in different formats, different varieties, different flavors. And yeah, I sometimes wonder, Chris, do we need 100 different types of jam in the UK? Yeah, well, that's another discussion, isn't it, really? But that's what's happened over the period of time in the UK, that we've segmented the market. So there is a type of jam for everybody, basically. Yep. And who's to say who's right and who's wrong here? But yeah, it's just, I think it's an interesting. But I think the key message is, if you've got one product on one product only, you're quite vulnerable in the market. If you've got a range of products, then you're much more interesting to a customer. And just to give an idea in the UK about our distribution capability for frozen fruits and vegetables, this is a sort of a graph that's come from the Cold Chain Federation in the UK, which is the main sort of trade association. And there, so there's no shortage of cold chain in the UK. This is where there are freezer centres. So we've got them all around the country. So once you get your product here, you can move it all around the country. There are concentrations maybe in places like east of England and the East Midlands, which are sort of bedrocks of maybe the food processing industry. So that's no major surprise there. But although we've had a concentration of the processing capacity, the distribution capacity in the UK is still very strong. One of the issues we have in the UK is that the age of our cold stores. So once your product has arrived in the UK, you've got to be able to move it around the country to various customers. The age of our cold stores is getting older, basically. So about a third of our capacity in the UK is 25 years old. And if you look at this graph again, only sort of 7%, I think it's saying there, is less than 5 years old. So we've got plenty of infrastructure in the UK, but the infrastructure is becoming slightly older than it probably should be. And so at some point, companies in the UK will have to invest in new infrastructure, and I guess they'll be looking for partners to do that. And so one opportunity in Serbia would be, as an example, I think, Jadranka, you've talked to us about Serbia's and other countries in Southeastern Europe, their sort of skill and expertise in frozen vegetable production or frozen fruit production. One of the opportunities would be to look forward to investing forward into the infrastructure. And we talked this about last time. If you look at the dried fruit sector in the UK, Turkey is a major supplier to the UK dried fruit sector. And as a result of that, over a period of time, a number of the UK leading new companies are now actually owned by Turkish-based businesses. So again, this sort of thing doesn't happen overnight, but it's something that people should be aware of. And there may be an opportunity to physically trade products, but there may be other opportunities to develop other sort of commercial relationships with the UK frozen food sector. And then we just talked about the energy costs in the UK. The UK will not be the only part of the world that has seen big increases in energy costs, but we're sort of seeing here that there's been a 183% increase in energy costs. So companies in the UK who are involved in the frozen food market will be looking to try and control and wherever possible reduce those costs. And I suppose they will also, there's things that they can do themselves here in the UK, but also they'll be looking to their suppliers who are sort of buying into the same sort of sentiment. And in some cases, why wouldn't you look to reduce your energy costs? Again, much easier said than done. But suppliers or customers in the UK will be looking to work and trade with businesses that also share an aspiration to control and reduce energy costs as much as possible, using almost any technique that is possible, basically. And there's a plethora of techniques out there to do this, but again, doing it and making a big difference, takes a little bit of time. It doesn't happen just overnight. And then again, in retail prices for fruit, why would people look at frozen? So if you look at the retail price of dried fruit in the UK, it's significantly higher than it is for fresh and frozen. I mean, depending on which product we're talking about, fresh and frozen can be interchangeable. Some products might be more expensive than others, basically. But frozen products, there is there is a respectable value chain there, and obviously the opportunity for companies in Southeastern Europe is to try and grab part of that share, basically. And so, yeah, I think the UK market, as Lizzie said right at the start, we are very dependent on imports. Good news for people in Southeastern Europe. We are dependent on imports, and those imports have come from Poland in the past. They've come from other parts of Europe, Belgium and Holland in particular, and France to some extent. But we are very dependent on, as Chris said, in our pea processing capacity in the UK, although we're processing the roughly the same amount of peas, it's being done by a smaller number of companies, basically. So key success factors, I think, if you want to make a success of the UK frozen fruit and vegetable market, I think first of all, grow for the processing market. I think many people around the world grow varieties that are more suited to the fresh sector. And at the end of it all, what they can't sell in the fresh format, they say, we know what to do here. We'll process it, we'll freeze it, and we'll try and sell it. And some varieties are just much better and more economic and more viable to freeze than others, basically. So I think you need to do your homework on what the varieties are for processing, and you need to have a much more rather than just growing lots of fruit, as much fruit and vegetables as you can, and hoping that at some point you'll find a market for. I think you need to understand the market that you're producing for, the market you're growing for, the market you're processing for, and have the best companies don't look at processing as a sort of a nice thing to do at the end of the day when everything else has been done. They sort of see it as a dedicated activity. So the varieties that grow, the machinery you have, the packaging you have, the sorts of customers you have, it's much more, it's a very dedicated effort towards the processing sector. Probably need to build a range of products. Having one product is okay, but actually having a range of products, you may not need 100 different products, as our photographs show, but having more than one product in that you can offer customers, I think is very important. And then sort of build that understanding of the market and customers, coming to things like the IFE and coming across. The best suppliers in the UK are probably coming across to the UK maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and they're always talking to their customers about what's happening in their source of supply, what's happening in the UK market, what the future requirements will be. Nothing stays the same for very long, basically. And there's a great opportunity, I think, to learn from others. We've talked about countries like Poland. They have a very well developed processing industry. Turkey, Chile, France, Holland, Belgium. Lizzie talked a bit about frozen potatoes. That's almost a sector in its own right. In Holland and Belgium, there is and places like Egypt, there is a substantial potato processing business. That really does revolve around scale of production and economies of scale. So if you're thinking of going into the frozen potato sector, you would need to do plenty of thinking about how you're going to do that and take on some fairly aggressive businesses in Western Europe and then places like Egypt. You need to have a sustainability plan. We talked about that. And then you need to have this very strong focus on the UK, not approach of, well, we'll supply the UK market 1 week and we won't do it next month. We'll come back in a few months' time and what have you. You need to be sort of thinking about the UK market and supplying the UK market on a regular and consistent basis. And if you want to supply the UK on a sort of an in and out basis as and when it suits you, then I'm afraid it will be a very hard job that you choose to do, basically. So again, the leading and most successful companies are focused on the UK market. Price is always very important. We've talked about that a little bit already. And then sort of good investment in infrastructure. So factories need to have BRC, British Retail Consortium accreditation, or HACCP or ISO. SALSA is accreditation scheme. It's mainly used in the UK for smaller scale businesses. I think there may be some opportunity to use SALSA as a sort of temporary type accreditation scheme, but really there's enough people in the world, whether they're in Poland or Turkey or Chile or France or Belgium, Holland, that have got BRC accreditation, that the UK market can ask its suppliers to be accredited at high levels, basically. And then the last thing is just, we've talked about the need for a sustainability plan. You can have great fruit, you can have great packaging, you can have a great service package, you can have great logistics, all these sorts of things. But also these days, you will need to have a sustainability plan that you can share with your customers and other stakeholders to the business. And so that might cover, people sometimes say, well, what should that cover? Well, it can cover a whole range of things, but as a minimum, sort of having a climate change mitigation plan, things like a policy on water and plastics usage and pesticide reduction at farm level, a policy for reducing food waste. Soil management at farm level is an increasing issue in the UK, and we expect farmers in the UK, but also other parts of the world, to have good, robust soil management plans, biodiversity, statements on modern slavery and the role of gender issues and particularly child labour. They're also very important. And then sort of statements and policies on staff training, development and well-being. And then also, in many cases, community engagement projects. So sustainability, can you have all those things in place from day one? Probably not, but over a period of time, you need to be sort of thinking that's what good looks like, I suppose, really. And you can look at some of the bigger food processing companies like Nestle and Unilever. Now, can you be like Nestle and Unilever? No, probably not in the short term. And you may never be like Nestle. They're a huge multinational company, but that's the sort of thing they're doing. And I think you need to look at what the best of class companies are doing and see how much of what they're doing can you replicate, and which is particularly relevant to your situation and your customers, basically. So having a good service package is one thing. Part of that now, probably as much as I think having the right varieties and good packaging and good logistics. I'm not saying they're totally taken for granted, but they are the norm. People all around the world can do this and can manage those sort of supply chains. One of the big issues is who's going to have good, independent, robust, meaningful sustainability indicators attached to their business. And I think that's it for today. If time for questions, Jadranka.
Thank you very much, John, Chris and Lizzie. It was very interesting to listen about this particular topic. Could we remove the slides, please, John, if you're in control of them? So perhaps now Alex can
there we go.
Enter or allow people who would like to ask the questions to be part of any question.
I will be sending all the attendees a request to become a panelist. If you have any questions you'd like to ask live, please accept the request and you'll be able to in a moment. Excellent.
Perhaps whilst we are waiting, John, I have two questions for you and Chris and Lizzie, or perhaps to wrap up what's happening after the trade agreements. I know there are lots of people who really don't accept and they don't like the way of Brexit, the new trade agreements, and supply chain with the EU has been broken and all sorts of things. However, what I see here is, as you mentioned, whenever something happened, you look for opportunities. Always there is opportunity if something is not quite right in the market. And here is that now every importer in the UK has to show origin of the product. And to have a benefit of trade agreement, which we have now, even though we are not EU, it's actually great stuff. And we can see in the last year, 26% growing on on trade between Britain and Serbia for the rest of Western Balkans. So something good is happening there, John, isn't it? And I will support this, especially now, to show our audience that this is a good opportunity to come here, talk, to learn, to talk to British people, see who they are, what they like. You know, it's great on Zoom, but I always like that one-to-one and develop relationship. Maybe all of this won't happen straight away after IFE, but we'll be there for them as a British Serbian Chamber of Commerce, who is a bilateral chamber, UK-based, a UK bilateral chamber. We'll be continuing this because I really deeply believe, not just Western Balkan, Southeastern Europe, I believe the trade agreements, the new one, can really contribute greatly to the UK consumers. What is you, John?
I think my view on that, Jadranka, will sort of, hey, look, we can have a whole session on Brexit. Now, in the UK, what's the view on Brexit? It would be difficult. I think a lot of people say it would be difficult to say that Brexit has been a fantastic success so far for the UK, but we have to take a longer term picture. You know, we were married to the European Union for 40 years, and now we've got divorced from the European Union. Is everything going to be okay straight away? No, and what have you. Hopefully, the sort of trade, the trade, cultural, diplomatic relationships will get better. It's been a very difficult time, hasn't it, over the last few years?
But we had COVID, John, as well. So we went from Brexit to COVID. We had lots of issues. It's not easy, it wasn't easy.
Absolutely. Then you throw in COVID. Then you throw in the situation in the Ukraine and what have you. And some of these things are interrelated, and where does one stop and the other one start? I don't know. But it's been a difficult time. Look, if there's been a 26% increase in exports as a result of this trade deal, then that's not a coincidence.
No. And it's not exporting to UK, then UK exporting to the
and region. It shows that the benefit of new trade deals, basically, and it's a great opportunity for the companies in your region, Jadranka, in the Western Balkans, to take it's a sort of once in a lifetime opportunity, really. So
it's an open window. We shouldn't close it. That's why we are coming here.
I think so the UK market is a large market. We're import dependent. It's a pretty demanding market. The companies that do well here, the best of class. Whether they're in Poland or Holland or Belgium or Chile or Turkey, they're all the best of class companies. And so what we found, we've done quite a lot of work in places like Chile in Latin America, and and South Africa as well, who supply the UK market with a combination of fresh and dried and frozen products. And often one of the things they say is, wow, it's a very demanding market. And therefore we're asked to do all sorts of things in terms of accreditations and quality assurance and promotional support, and our service package needs to be really, really strong. What they also say is, if we use the fact we supply the UK market when we're talking to other customers, and they sometimes say, look, if we can supply the UK market, we can supply you, because the UK is we have to be careful in the UK.
It's a benchmark, shall we say, benchmark in the world.
We have to show that we have to be careful in the UK that we don't say, well, that we're the UK and therefore we're the best. That's not always true, but the UK is a demanding market, and countries around the world often use the fact they can meet the technical and commercial requirements of the UK market. They use that when they're talking to other customers. But the UK market in its own right is, maybe we're a bit biased at Promar, we'd say it's a very interesting market, and anybody who's serious about exports from Southeastern Europe should be thinking about the UK market. But it will take time. And
there is one thing I don't want to forget. Yes, Chris?
I said they do need to visit. I think however much people, we can talk about these things, it's not until you go around some of the large supermarkets, some of the wholesale markets, etc., that people begin to appreciate this. I mean, I've been involved in other similar things to this, and then we've had a group of people coming to Britain, and they've gone round, if I say one of the lower value supermarkets, and they've turned to me and said, everything on the shelf is good. You know, and you feel like saying, well, that's what we've been saying for, you know, right the way through. But it's not until you sort of see this and you appreciate this. You know, people seem to, you know, think that, oh, well, we're just talking about, you know, we're painting through a glossy picture. I think it really is important to actually to see, you know, what people are doing, what they like, what they don't. If I could just use one other example, and then we've got quite an old population in Britain. You know, here I am as an example of that. But one of the things that people don't know, if you record the number of people who end up in hospital with knife injuries, they're more likely to be in their 70s than their teens. And that's not because people in their 70s fight, but it's because sometimes opening some of the packaging can be quite difficult. And so people will use the knife slips. So sometimes there can be opportunities, you know, in that way. You know, if you go on Age Concern, one of our major charities, they have quite a lot about this. You know, so there can be all sorts of just little things like that which may give you an edge.
Well, I think that's a really good point, Chris. It's again, it's attention to detail. It's understanding the consumer, the nature of the consumer base. Lizzie, you talked about, you know, the use of resealable packaging. I must admit, I find sometimes I hope I'm not an old guy, but I sometimes find the packaging around some of these products almost impossible to open. But resealable packaging seems to me a wonderful way of making it easy. You know, if you buy a product and you can't open it, it seems to be, well, what's all this about? But resealable packaging, I think that's a great idea, and it's easy to use. It helps keep the product intact and whatever. And as Lizzie says, you can open it, you can reseal it, you can put it back in the freezer, and you avoid food wastage and what have you. But again, that's all attention to detail, and also, you know, the use of plastics in packaging. Surely, look, we're moving to a society where, you know, the use of plastics or the overuse of plastics is being frowned upon. It's not good for the planet. It's not good for the environment. It's not a good use of raw materials and resources and what have you. So, you know, somebody who can come up with a more eco-friendly packaging format. You know, what we're looking for is, I suppose we're looking for everything. We want eco-friendly packaging. We want convenient packaging. We want attractive packaging still. We want to see nice pictures of the products and what have you that entice us to buy these products. But yeah, again, attention to detail.
Thank you, John. I would like to bring Peter Reich, who is attending IFE, and he's one of our 10 companies selected from FAO. So perhaps, Peter, would you like to ask a question and share with us how did you find the mentoring sessions? Where are you, Peter?
Yes.
Oh, here we are. Hello.
Yes. Hello, and
good morning.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank you, all three of you, Miss Lizzie, Dr. Chris, and Mr. John. Thank you for all really wonderful presentations and really good and valuable information for the UK market. I believe that everyone can find it really helpful here. Our company is one of the largest frozen fruits producer from Serbia. So this is the topic which was very interesting for me, among others, of course, but this one was quite, aim to our company. So I have two of the questions. First one is regarding the origin of the product on the shelf. What is the, let's say, consumer preferences? Do they prefer some specific origin, for example, or they are just price focused when buying products? For example, we have in our history of doing business, found out that German producers, for example, and German consumers and France consumers are preferring our variety of raspberry from Serbia, among others. But if they are price ranged in the same level, they will choose to use the Serbian product. That is one question. And the second question is regarding the retailers. Do you perhaps have that information, and what is their strategy? Are they preferring to buy products all frozen and fruits and vegetables, for example, from one trader where they can finish their whole supply, or they are going directly to manufacturers, and they such as our company, and they have a agreement with them just for, let's say, fruit-based frozen category. For example, I'm talking about my company because at the moment we are just fruit processor, so those are two of them.
They're very long questions, but
yeah,
you will have to repeat it better. So
no problem.
Do we remember the first one? John, will you take the lead?
Yeah, look, I'll have a go at answering the first one, and my colleagues can think about the second one. So look, I think when we tend to talk about consumers in the UK and other parts of the world as if they're all the same. So I think when there are some consumers that when they go shopping, I go shopping on a Saturday morning. So whether does that make me typical or not, I don't know. I've always been told not to think that I am a typical consumer. When I go on Saturday morning, I will stop and look at the products I'm buying because I'm interested, because it's part of what I do for my job. So when I buy a packet if I buy frozen vegetables or frozen fruit, I will look and see, where does it come from? Oh, it comes from Serbia. That's interesting. I've been talking to some people in Serbia. I may even know the people who grew this and what have you. But I think a lot of people, and so there are some people for whom this is incredibly important. Where does their fresh fruit come from? Where does their dried fruit come from? Where does their frozen fruits and vegetables come from? And they will probably know a little bit about they may have visited the country, and it's very important, and they take an interest. I suspect, particularly for frozen vegetables, lots of people they look at the brand of the product. Is it a supermarket brand? Is it the supplier brand? Is it, Bird's Eye would be one of the big brands in the UK, for example, or one of the other big frozen, Bondwell, who are a French company. And I think they probably pick up the packet and they put it in their trolley, and that's as far as they think about it. They'll be thinking about what product is, what size is the pack, how much is this, how much is it going to cost me when I'm going to pay for it. And I suspect that the number of people who really take an interest in what the product comes from is probably quite small. There is, however, having said that, I think there is inherent interest in the UK if we think that if we're buying frozen peas that come from Britain, we're helping farmers, and that we might even be contributing to sort of lower carbon footprints, and that's sometimes true, that's sometimes not. Again, when you get into, do consumers really understand all the issues about carbon footprinting and what have you, carbon neutral supply chains? Probably not. It's a very complicated subject. But I think there is a sense that if we're buying things it can be very simple. If the packet has got a Union Jack on it, we're helping local farmers and we're helping the climate. And that makes us fit. That alleviates our conscience for the week. Basically, it means that we can feel good about ourselves. Lizzie, do you want to add anything to
that? Lizzie, you're currently
on
muted.
mute, Lizzie.
Sorry. So I was just thinking about when I go down the frozen fruit aisle in the supermarket, what can I see? And the choices aren't vast. So there would be probably one choice of raspberries, one choice of blueberries, then there'd be the mixed bags, then there'd be the smoothie bags, and then they'd be sort of the mangoes, the different ones. There wouldn't be huge choices. It wouldn't be split by kind of varieties like you would get in the other, in sort of the fresh area. Probably wouldn't even be split by bag sizes or anything like that. It'd be kind of just like if you want your blueberries or you want whatever fruit you want, really. So as such, I think that there would be the opportunity there. There doesn't tend to be sort of the Union Jacks associated with it. Nobody's particularly shouting about the country of origin there. So I think that there's good opportunity there for different countries around the world, especially you guys, to kind of break into that market and have a look.
That is why I asked that question, because through the whole sessions, some of the informations were that supplier for UK market were usually Poland, Chile, etc. So are there any potential for new markets? Now I received the answer that there is really,
Yeah, so the origins isn't shouted about on the frozen fruit and veg, probably because it's kind of all imported. The UK production would go into the fresh produce sector. I mean, those retailers, because those products are already on the shelves, they're going to have suppliers established, but that's not putting the opportunity, there's always opportunity there, there's always the open for discussion there. But there's not the great range of products on offer that you would see in the fresh aisle area. So it would be you shouting about your product, why your blueberries should be in those bags rather than someone's from Chile or something like that.
Yeah.
And I suppose, Lizzie, is the value for money.
Yeah, definitely. So
if the price is good and the raspberry good quality, and it's down the road from Europe, it's only a day and a half by the truck. I believe the new buyers, they're looking those kind of opportunities, particularly now with the energy cost. Yeah,
I would say, especially with the frozen fruit sector, it's as long as if you've got a good product, so the quality's right, it's the taste that the UK consumer wants, and the price is at the right price point, then I think you've got every chance of kind of getting in there, and the opportunities are there for you. I think in the fresh produce sector, then they're probably wanting to see the UK flag a little bit more when it's in season and those kind of elements. But in the frozen sector, I think you've just got to make sure you're ticking those boxes that John mentioned at the end of the presentation, and the quality and the price are key key elements to that, as well as trust of supply, so making sure you can achieve the volumes that you say you can, that the retailers are going to be wanting, and that your production's going to be consistent enough. Really, that's the issue that they've seen recently in the fresh produce aisle with the tomatoes and the cucumbers. Climate Spain have had climate challenges, so they haven't had the productions as much, which the retailers have seen the empty shelves, and that's not what they want to see at all, because they're not making money at that point if they've got empty shelves.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Can I just come in? We've just been talking about the supermarkets. The food service sector is also going to be important for frozen. I mean, things like you get these smoothie bars, which are obviously they're buying there, and for them it's the right sort of packaging. They're not wanting it, they may be wanting it in a 5 kilo bag or whatever it is, but from the work I've done with them, consistency and reliability of supply. If you are a food service company, you're wanting to know that you can buy these frozen fruit or whatever it is, right the way through the year. It's not going to be after 6 months or something or other, they're going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's out of season." They want the continuity of supply, and that's one of the things that they're really concerned with. It's the continuity of supply.
So, Petre, you must have all answers when you talk to buyers next week.
Yeah, I have them, and those remarks that you mentioned are really helpful, and we are already, let's say, able to fulfill all of them. So I'm just focusing on retailer because that is, one side of our job, and mine, development of those markets is one of the focus at the moment. But we are doing, let's say, 50-50 supply for industrial factories as well as the retailers. So
okay, thank you.
Okay. I think again a good you look at the best of class. Having, as I say, having all the phrase that people use in the UK. I hope it translates. Having all your eggs in one basket, having a diversified customer base. You tend to find that companies are maybe we're focused, maybe 80% of what we do is focused on retailers, but also we have 20% which is looking at the industrial markets, and it just gives a bit of balance. But having, in extreme examples, you have companies in the UK who have one customer.
Yeah.
And you think, so that I remember, you know, talking to this guy, and I said, well, you know, don't, how do you sleep at night? And he said, well, he used to supply sort of 6 of the leading retailers. And he said, I used to go to bed and worry about each of these retailers for 15 minutes each. He said, and then I go to sleep. He said, now I've only got one customer and I'm totally focused on them. And he said, I go to them, I go to bed, I think about them for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then I go to sleep. So it's quite a high risk position. He's taken this decision that he's basically become an outsourced part of the retail,
part of the company.
Yeah. And, okay, so he's comfortable with what he's doing, but generally, again, you know, sort of having some diversity of your customer base, I think, is a good idea.
Yeah, excellent. So thank you for the answers.
Thank you, Petra, very much.
Looking forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah.
Likewise. Thank you. Well, I don't see any questions. No, Alex, on my side, I can't see it. So I think this is the end of our 5 mentoring sessions. And perhaps I can ask you just maybe 1 or 2 sentences to say how you enjoyed and advice for next week, which we'll hopefully see you all at IFE. So John, can we start with you? I'm sure you learned something from us as well about the region.
It's a two-way thing, isn't it? We learn from you, you learn from us, hopefully. I hope that people have found these sessions are useful. Obviously, we have about 45 minutes normally, and then some Q&A, questions and answers, and there's a limit to what we can get across in these sessions and what have you, but we've tried to sort of give people a feel for what the market in the UK looks like and what people do who are successful in supplying it. Basically, I would think, no matter how, hopefully our sessions have been useful and help, if they've made people think about what they want to do next, that's important. I think, Jadranka, as we sort of said earlier on this morning, no matter how good the sessions are, the real work starts now. So we hopefully have done our bit, and we've helped people understand and made them think about the market, but the real work starts now, and that's where we can help, and Chris can help, and your organization can help as well. But basically, this is the start. This is the start of the journey, not the end of it.
Excellent. Lizzie?
I know
you know the market, you know Western Balkans, Southeastern Europe. That's your forte, but
it's been a few years, and it's been lovely to touch base with producers over there again, and hopefully provide them some assistance in terms of the UK market. I think when you're over next week, just take the opportunity, if you get it, to go and visit some supermarkets, have a look around, have a look at the products, even speak to a customer or two if you've got that opportunity, and if you've got a bit longer, then go to those wholesale markets, because they're really interesting to look at, and just walk around with your senses really, and take it all in, because it'll be a very different market to what you're used to, but one that I think is, it's not too different. We've all got the same kind of supermarkets and things like that, but it's interesting to see the different tastes and flavors that we eat, and that's the joy of traveling, really. So I hope you learned something, and you all succeed in what you're trying to do.
Thank you, Lizzie. Professor?
I think what John used the expression service package a number of times, and I don't think we can use this expression too many times, because I think you've got to get all the different bits sorted out, and I think that, to me, just thinking about the Western Balkans, you've got so many things going for you, and you're not that far away, you've got the right sort of climate, etc. But it's just making sure you've got all the various different bits there, and I know somebody listening to this may have thought that we just keep repeating some of the same things again and again, and that's not because we've got nothing else to say and we're just padding it out. It's just that the things about the service package are just so important. And I know from my experience, You know, sometimes you get people who are very keen on, they've got a marvelous product, etc., but they haven't got all the various parts sorted out. And if you haven't got all the parts sorted out, you're not going to succeed. So that would be my comment. Okay.
Thank you very much to all. Thank you for all our wonderful people, companies who are part of our project. I'm so much looking forward to seeing them next week, and I'm sure we'll let you know about everything, how did it go, and let you know where you can buy the products for Western Balkans as well when we sign the contracts. If not, it's a long journey, but I'm sure we start the journey. On that note, I would like to thank you very much for all of those wonderful sessions. Thank you for taking time, and lovely to meet you. And I hope this is not the last, and I hope very long business relationship with you and with our companies from Western Balkan. I would like to say also thank you to all the team of the British Serbian Chamber of Commerce who has been with us all the time. And without Alex and Tiana, Tea, we wouldn't be here today, because they make sure that all runs smoothly. So I wish you a very good day. Enjoy wonderful sunshine. Is in Cambridge. I don't know where you are. And once again, thank you. Good day.